When hinges creak in doorless chambers, and strange and frightening sounds echo through the halls, whenever candlelights flicker, where the air is deathly still, that is the time when ghosts are present, practicing their terror with ghoulish delight.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. Welcome to Conversations with Candy. We're going to have ourselves a spectacular night of spooky stories. So get on your jammies and grab yourself a snack and maybe your favorite blanket. Curl up with your family and friends, because here we go on this spooky night. I'm going to tell you some of my favorite urban legends and ghost stories. So, the first story. This one is for you, Maria, and for your children. This one is very tame for children, and it'll be fun for your kids to tell their friends about. But before I get started, I'd like to give you some pointers on telling ghost stories and how you can deliver it. It's all in how you say it. If you really want to scare people, you start out talking normal, like this. And as the story progresses, you start to talk softer and softer. And then you have to lean in to hear what you're saying. And then yell boo! Or whatever word it is at the very end of the story. Makes them jump, and you get them every time. Okay, kids, here's the first story. It begins in a hotel like any other. But this hotel is special. This hotel has a room that they refuse to rent to anyone because it is said that it is haunted. A businessman on a trip came to town, but there was a convention going on. Couldn't find a room anywhere. So he goes to this hotel to see if he can find a room, and they say they have nothing, but he pleads with them and begs with them to finally give them a room. The manager of the hotel says, well, we do have one room, but it's haunted. I have to warn you. I don't think I should give you the key. The man said, please, anything. I must stay here the night. So the man gives him the key and says, all right. And he tells him what floor it's on and wishes him luck. The man, not really believing in haunted houses or haunted rooms for that matter, goes to the elevator and takes himself to his floor. He comes over to his room and he puts the key in the lock. And he twists it. He opens the door and the room is dark. And as he steps foot into the room, he hears a voice say, I got you where I want you. Now I'm gonna eat you. The man, hearing this voice out of nowhere, freaks out, leaves his bag, and runs away, full hail. I guess he did believe in haunted houses. The next night, another man comes, and it's the same story. He needs a room, and he doesn't believe in ghosts either. So the man kind of rolls his eyes and gives him the keys, because he remembers the first man who said he didn't believe in scary rooms and ghosts. And this man, he goes up to the room, opens the door, steps inside, and puts his bags in. He walks over to where the bed is, and then he hears the voice. I got you where I want you. Now I'm gonna eat you. And this man takes off running, only have making it a few extra steps into the room. The third night, another man comes, and it's the same story. He also needs a room. And this time the manager is just like, no. Everybody keeps saying that this room is haunted. They refuse to even stay for 5 minutes. What makes you any different? And this man's like, really? I really don't believe in ghosts. So he gives him the key, and the man aims to go upstairs and prove it. He opens the door, and he gets into the room, and he closes the door. And he hears, I got you where I want you. Now I'm gonna eat you. He looks around, and he flips on the light switch, but there's no one there. And so he makes his way toward the bathroom, and he hears it again. I got you where I want you. Now I'm gonna eat you. He looks around the bathroom, but there's nothing there, but he continues to hear the voice. And as he walks further into the room, he hears it a little bit louder. I got you where I want you. Now I'm gonna eat you. The man reaches over and he opens the closet door. And inside the closet is a monkey with a banana. And he says, I got you where I want you. Now I'm gonna eat you. Okay, that one was pretty tame, guys. but I hope you liked it. Practice it with your parents, and then go tell your friends. Our next ghost story is more of an urban legend. Perhaps you've heard of it in your area, and perhaps you haven't. This is one I heard growing up about a babysitter. She's called to go babysit a little boy and a little girl, and she goes into the home, and Mommy and Daddy, they tell her that the children are already asleep in bed and not to worry about waking them. They give her instructions, and they give her phone numbers where they can be reached, and they leave for their date night. The babysitter sits down to do her homework, and unlike any other time, or just like any other time, the phone rings. So she picks up the phone to answer it. Hello? All she can hear is breathing. And then she hears, "Have you checked the children?" And she kind of hangs up, thinking it's a prank. Maybe one of her friends who knew she was babysitting, perhaps the wrong number, perhaps just a freak. But she tries not to pay any mind as she continues to do her homework. Again, a few minutes later, she receives another phone call. "Have you checked the children?" This time, she feels a little bit more scared. So she hangs up and she calls the police and she says, "There's somebody calling me, asking me if I checked the children. I'm babysitting, I'm here by myself, what should I do?" They tell her not to worry, that it's probably just some crank caller giving her a hard time, but if she gets scared again, to give them a call. So she hangs up, and again, not too long down the road, she gets another phone call. This time she's expecting the scary, breathy voice on the other end of the line, and it says, "Have you checked the children?" This time she calls the police again, and they said, "All right, we'll put a tap on the line to see who's calling you. But you've got to get them to speak for at least a minute for us to be able to trace the call." So, when the caller calls again and says, "Have you checked the children?" she asks him, "Why do you keep calling me? What do you want?" And all she can hear is his breath on the other end of the line as he listens to her panicked voice, questioning him and asking him why he's doing this, or what he wants from her. She finally hangs up and goes upstairs to check on the children. And as she heads to the room and opens the door, the phone in her hand rings. She picks it up, and it's the police. And the police say, "You've got to get the children. You've got to get out of the house. The call is coming from inside the house. He's in the house with you." So she wakes the children and grabs them and starts to leave the home. And the police arrive just in time to nab a killer. Someone bent on her and the children's destruction. Kind of makes you scared to babysit, doesn't it? Alright, boys and ghouls, before I tell our final and third story of the evening, I want to know what your ghost stories are. What are the urban legends around where you live, where you've grown up? What are the spooky tales and spooky stories that you've always heard? After all, Halloween is a time of year for spooky stories, and everyone's got one to top another person. Go ahead, in the comments, tell me. I'd love to hear it. Alright. For our third story, and this is a story that is not my own, but it is very spooky. So those of you with little boys and ghouls might want to pause and send them to bed, because this one is not for the little kids. This story takes place in Kentucky, out in the lakes area, where there's lots of woods and forests that haven't been populated. People go out there to hike and to camp, canoe, and spend time with nature. But sometimes there's something wrong with nature. Sometimes it creates something so awful and so horrible. This takes us to another little town that's just on the outskirts of this wooded area. There is a beautiful little home, but it's set back away on a dirt road, away from people, away from neighbors. And two little girls are playing outside just before sunset. and they're waiting for their little brother, their older brother, to come home. He likes to take his dirt bike out and ride around in the woods, but their father always said, "Be home before dark. I don't like you playing out in those woods after dark." The little girls are playing, and they play on the porch, and they're listening for the sounds of the motorcycle and the different grades as it switches gears as it comes closer. Soon enough, as the sky begins to turn a twilighty purple, and you can begin to see the darkness push the sun away, they begin to hear the sound of the motorbike coming down. But they notice something different. It's not switching gears. It seems like it's running on full throttle at full speed, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. So they stand up off the porch and they look. And down the hill they see their older brother riding at full speed, and they can see him coming around the curve. And the older little girl, she just knows that if he doesn't slow down, he's going to crash. Well, he does slow down a little bit, but not enough, and his bike leaves the ground, and it flies into the air for just a moment, but it reconnects shortly thereafter. And he comes and he flips it to the side, and he slides in, and it kind of falls off the bike. And he just sits there for a minute, and his eyes are wide, and he's looking, but he's not looking at them. He's looking at the hill behind him, the direction he had just come from. So they kind of look around with him, wondering what it is he's looking for, or what it is he sees. His eyes are as big and as wide as saucers, and he kind of looks at them and he says, "I saw it." And they're kind of just looking at him, not really understanding what he's saying, as he's not really saying much, and he just looks so shocked, like he's never, and afraid, like he's never seen anything like this before, whatever it is he saw. And he says, "And it walked on 2 legs." And the little girls just kind of look at him, and then they start to hear their dogs that were penned up in the cage next to the porch begin to howl and bark as if they sense something nearby. And then they look up on the hill and they hear this horrible howl, like a cry, sort of like a wolf or a coyote, but deeper and louder, as if the lungs that expelled the howl were much larger than a wolf. The boy gets up and he looks at the hill, and he can see, stepping out of the woods and onto the road, what looks to be a wolf. But then it stands up on 2 legs, and they can see it's tall. It's so much taller, it's even taller than a man. It stands about 7 feet tall. And as they're staring at it for just a moment, they can see the dark, black, inky eyes, so deep set, and they can see the snarling teeth and the moonshine as it hits the saliva on the teeth. They can see its tuffets of gray and black fur, and they can see its clawed fingers outstretched as it howls at the moon. A light flickers on, a driveway light, just above its head, and it flickers and flickers as it's getting ready to pop on for the night. The boy grabs the girls and starts ushering to the house, a hand on a back of each, and they quickly get inside. They close the door and they lock the door, and they start shutting furniture, bags of dog food, anything they can find to seal that door shut behind them. They run to the kitchen and they grab knives. And at first, one of the indoor dogs, he comes over and starts sniffing around the door, the front door. Then all of a sudden, its hackles raise up, and it begins to growl and back up. The children, terrified out of their minds, they can hear something scratching on the doors, and they run to their parents' room. They run to the room, and they climb under the bed with their knives, terrified, not sure if they can even defend themselves, but they hear it. They can hear it scraping the walls. They hear the glass break of one of the windows, and they pray that it won't get in. And then they hear a honking. And they hear their mother calling, "Children! Children! Come help me with the groceries!" But they're too terrified to even move. And they hear the mother honk again and calls out again, "Children, come help me with the groceries." A few moments later, when they still have not emerged from under the bed, they can hear a door in the lock, and they can hear the furniture from behind the door being pushed open. Then the mother finally opens her door and tells the children, "Where are you? Come out and help me." And slowly but surely they emerge from under the bed. They're completely terrified, and she's horrified to see them with knives. And she asks them what happened, and they begin to tell her what happened, and they're all tumbling over each other with the words. And she can see the look of fear in their eyes, and she tells them to wait there. She goes to the other room, and she can see the window that was broken in from the outside. Whatever it was is gone. Dad arrives home later that night, and she too tells him what happened when she had arrived home. From that time on, they were not allowed to ride their bikes in the woods. They were not allowed out there because now they knew what was out there, that they weren't going to disobey. They knew what would happen if they ever did. So be careful when you're out there in the woods, out in Kentucky or anywhere else, because you just never know when the wolf man might come, and he might be hungry, and you might be his dinner.
If you would like to join our jamboree, there's a simple rule that's compulsory. Mortals pay a token